Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com. As you can see here, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, and I'm having a lot of fun doing all of that, and the Jewish Press, I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. But someone who knows all too well about dealing with government is our guest today, Harris Oberlander. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Trinity Alliance of the Capital District. So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you for having me.
And I just got to ask you to move your mic up on your lapel there.
Okay.
All the way up.
The first thing I have to ask is, what is the Trinity Alliance?
Right.
Trinity Alliance is a 104-year-old settlement house. So when immigrants from all the European countries were coming during the early 1900s to the Lower East Side through Ellis Island, this model of social agency got started. It started in Chicago and spread all across the United States like wildfire into all the major metropolitan areas. A settlement house is just like it sounds. It helps people with language, finding kin, housing, shelter, food, clothing, employment, education, and other services that help the community to strengthen.
But probably throughout the years it dealt with different communities. I know around 1900s probably was more the Jewish community. I don't think more, but the Jewish people needed to be settled in, as the story goes. And then there's other, obviously, nationalities that throughout the years have come through that needed help.
Yeah, absolutely. A settlement house adapts to the community, and is responsive to the community. So in the early 1900s, it was the immigrants that may or may not have been Jewish. There was also a large Irish contingency, a large Italian contingency, German. I'll tell you a quick story.
Very good.
Reverend Creighton Story, who established Trinity as a settlement house, he was the pastor of the Episcopal Church next door, raised the convent house that was on the property to build Trinity. When he died in 1930, the Jewish newspaper stated, "Our pastor has died." So the idea was he was so ecumenical, and that's what makes a settlement house so unique. It does respond. So during the 40s and 50s, when Jim Crow laws were in effect, many African Americans fled the South, came north, and found refuge there. In fact, during the 1960s, Alice Green was the executive director, and the civil rights movement was really seated at Trinity Institution for Albany.
The forerunner to Trinity Alliance, it was called
Trinity Institution. Right. Yes, we changed that about 8 years ago when we merged two organizations, the Arbor Hill Community Center and Trinity.
And Homer Perkins.
And Homer Perkins Center preceded that, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I knew Homer, and I liked him. He's a good guy.
No kidding. Yeah. He was a civil rights leader in the Arbor Hill district, and Mayor Whalen established Homer Perkins Center as a locally based substance abuse rehab, noting that typically people of color are incarcerated for drug offenses, where Caucasians are typically sent to treatment. And he wanted there to be a treatment outlet in the Arbor Hill community for his constituency. And Mayor Whalen agreed to that and built the Homer Perkins Center, which still exists today. Funny about it.
But it's part of Trinity Alliance, right?
It is part of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
According to your website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But it does exist as its own. What, it has its own budget, or it gets part of its budget?
It's part of the full agency budget.
Okay.
But it has its own sources.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. The refugees of Burma today are making a big part of their day at Trinity Alliance. We have a partnership with a retired professor, a professor at the School of Public Health at the University of Albany, Russ Altone, and his wife, who founded the Refugee Community Health Project, and they're helping connect Burmese refugees with medical services, providing you know, the needed advocacy and explanations so that the Burmese population, which is the second largest foreign language speaking group in the city of Albany now, with that kind of support. So it keeps its roots.
You know, what is the language that they speak?
Karen. There are different minorities. So the Karen community is the one that's been focused on, but they're making inroads with, believe it or not, the Karenni. And then there's a third, and I don't know the name of it.
And Burma was another name?
Burma, it was Burma. It's now Myanmar.
Now it's Myanmar.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But when you get people to help them, how do you get people, staff, to know their language?
Well,
I mean,
they've...
to help, well, I would assume one of their ways is just to teach them English.
Right. So another branch of Trinity is our Capital South Campus Center, and we've, with the BOCES, the Northeast BOCES here in the local area, established the Literacy Zone, State Education Department funded, and that is all about English as a second language. So we have classes that have been established all over Arbor Hill, West Hill, and the South End, in addition to all over Albany County. And so these refugees are able to learn there. But there are members of the community, indigenous members, who are English speakers. There's actually one who was medically trained in Burma, and so they are the bridge in terms of language.
You know, of course, I'm a rabbi, so I know the Jewish community better than anything else. But I know the Russian immigrants came, this is probably 20 years, 25 years ago, 1990. Now you don't see them coming in so much, but they were really a flood of immigrants. And even today, I mean, I try to speak to the Russian immigrants when I can. I mean, they're older, but it's very difficult for them to, I know, to learn the language, number one, and to assimilate, number two. They just stick together because the American culture is so different than what they're used to.
I think that's true for the first generation. I know from my children's having been exposed to Russian immigrants at the Hebrew Academy that, you know, the second generation has well integrated, and actually many of them are on to very, very successful careers in finance, medical professions, and so on. And I think they've added a lot. And I think it's instructive at this time when we're being told by one of our candidates that immigrants are, you know, a liability that, you know, we have in this community.
Illegal immigrants.
Illegal immigrants.
Not all immigrants.
Correct. But, you know, there's always been a push against immigrants. I have a dear friend who lives in Washington County who showed me the house where their forefathers came. They was shunted back into the woods, and I asked why, and her response was that the Irish weren't allowed to live on the road. They weren't allowed to live right next to the road. Today, that seems, you know, it seems impossible, but there's always been this pushback against immigrants.
In the Jewish community, in the 1860s, there were the German Jews that came. Then in the 1880s, there were the Polish Jews that came. Then in the turn of that century, it was the Russian Jews that came. And you had, each one had a break-off synagogue, because every Jew needs a synagogue they go to and a synagogue they don't go to. But even within the Jewish community, it was a different type of Judaism that was practiced. So they tried to assimilate within the Jewish community, and then they couldn't, so they started their own branch where they were more comfortable, and their own branch. So we had 3 synagogues, and then that all became Congregation Beth Abraham Jacob after a while. And, you know, I just don't think it's inherent. I think it crosses all cultures. I mean, even within the Irish community or the Italian community, the Italians have, you know, northern Italy and Sicily. You know, if you're a Siciliano, you know, you're very different from someone who's in Napolitano.
Yes.
And Irish, you know, you had the problems with the Northern Ireland and Irish, and you know, you had issues there. So I'm just saying, I want to agree with you, but it's not just all immigrants and like and Americans against immigrants. It's even within their own cultures.
Yes, I entirely agree, and I think that's the magic of a settlement house, that, you know, everybody is welcome and every effort is made to create a place for the people that are coming, with a recognition that what we share is the vulnerability of being new in the country and not really having our bearings and trying to find a place. And even today, you know, we have displaced people who are homeless and so on and so forth. And, you know, what we try to create is a place that's welcoming and supportive of all.
That's what I was just thinking of asking once you brought that up also now. I mean, there's one thing, the immigrants, of course, need help because they don't know the language, the culture, you know, I think that's obvious. But what about, I mean, people that are good Americans for 3-4 generations, they're the vets, you know, they're good Americans and they're down and out and they need help in their own way.
Right. I think, you know, economic displacement especially has been a big challenge for our country as we modernize and technology takes over. And there are refugees from among the native population, if you will, and they're all around us. I'm very gratified that the Capital South Campus Center was recently featured in an article by the Times-Union in which 2 veterans were talking about how they found at the Capital South Campus Center an academic and an employment track for themselves. And in fact, I just heard last week that one of them graduated from HVCC and his intention is to go into physical therapy.
Isn't that nice?
So it's a beautiful thing when it works, and you know, we're very mindful of all segments of the population.
So when in Schenectady, I think under the Jasinski administration, he went and had a lot of Guyanese move into Schenectady County. You know, you're the capital region, so did you have to deal with the Guyanese?
Not so
you're just
much.
Not Albany County. You're
right.
Just throughout the area.
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, the major focus is Albany County with our 11 locations in the city of Albany.
Okay.
We have a location in Colony. We are at the Albany County Correctional Facility. We, you know, so our niche, I would say, is Albany, or the sort of the springboard. We have many services that are extra any county. So for instance, we were talking about the substance abuse rehab program.
Right.
We accept from all over the state. We have an early childhood program that does home visiting for children who are at risk of developmental delays, and we visit Saratoga, Albany, Schenectady, Rensselaer, Greene County. So we you know, we're not limited, but the focus is within the city.
You know, this is interesting also. We see the population has shifted, you know, to different types of immigrants, but also the problems, like, I mean, I don't know how many years you were involved with that, but like now drug problem, I mean, I don't, maybe it was in the 60s, so, but you know, now that's like headline news, the heroin addiction.
He's a child of the 60s.
Yeah.
Well, I was a really small child in the
Yeah.
60s.
You
I
and me
missed it. But, you know...
I'm just saying now that's the big #1 issue. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
gotten a lot of attention because it's now become a middle-class suburban problem. The issue for me has been all along, as I started to say earlier, that, you know, there are plenty of people who are people of color who happen to also have been affected by, you know, you know, by drugs in one way or another, and who are, by and large, ending up in incarceration situations. And there's a great disparity. There's an overrepresentation of minorities in criminal justice. And, you know, I mean, what I'm working for, what Trinity is working for, is to level that playing field. And to bring attention to policy decisions and funding issues that make it such that, you know, the problem has sort of been shunted away and invisible. There's an issue of moral and fairness, you know, dimension here, and it's too costly. You know, it's more costly to incarcerate And so, you know, to the extent that we have a voice in that, we've tried to bring attention to it.
Do you go, you know, because I deal with the prison system a lot and prisoners, and are you an advocate sometimes? I mean, not an advocate, but just saying sometimes, and I've dealt with some cases where the judge is very lenient and saying, you know, maybe go to your place, go to the Trinity Alliance, get some help. I mean, if it's a minor crime, if it's a major crime, they're not going to do it. But, you know, like you said, like a little bit drugs, selling, and saying, pal, you need help if you sign up for this program or whatever, I don't know.
Very much so.
Then you're saying you can stay out of the jail.
Yeah, my own personal days of being in court for that purpose is over, but, you know, I have people on our staff who have, you know, very straight lines to the judges and advocate, you know, go in and advise the court and try to devise a plan that will keep a person in a situation where they're getting treatment as a first line of defense, and addressing the other issues that are sort of, you know, at the root of why the person is having this issue. And there are other root causes that may be at play that, you know, need to come into to the attention of a treatment professional in order to alleviate that, so that we don't have this going on and on. In addition, you know, we have all of our employment and education services that can also help them, you know, replace, you know, that lifestyle with something that's more productive.
Now, I wanted, in every show, when we talk about, give a profile of a agency or an organization that someone's in charge of, we also want the audience to know about the individual who we're talking about, who heads up that agency. So you and I know each other from University at Albany. We're both about the same age. Rabbi Simon says he's always 29, and he stays there. But, you know, but you have a rather short resume. I mean, after University at Albany, you graduated in 1980. I was an 81 graduate. But we also, you were at St. Anne's, and then...
Well,
you said you went to graduate school first.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, I grew up in a conservative home. My mother was a Hebrew school teacher and principal. My father was a tutor. I spent 5 years in Israel working and learning.
Temple Israel was your home?
No, actually, I grew up in Suffolk County.
Okay.
So...
Which town?
Smithtown.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, went to Old Pond and Hebrew High School, and was on Young Judea Year course. And so after college, I volunteered for a year in working in social work in Israel. I came back, went to Yeshiva University, Wurzweiler School of Social Work, got my master's degree, worked in the city for a year for the Jewish Association for College Youth, Hillel. And then my wife and I decided to try to make it in Israel. We lived there for 3 years, had 2 children there. She worked as a teacher in a place for preschool children, a therapeutic environment. I worked in a children's village, a residential treatment center and special education school for children in Beersheba. We came back in '87. I went to work at St. Anne, worked there for 17 years, and then Trinity.
Well, what brought you from Israel to St. Anne? I mean, that seems...
Well, you know, when we were coming back, living on Long Island was not something that either of us wanted to do. I had ties here in Albany from when I went to college, and, you know, had some interviews, and luckily ended up at St. Anne, and that was a great place to work.
Okay, so your folks didn't come up here?
No.
I thought,
no.
You came up here with your wife and your kids. How many kids do you have now? 2. 2, still?
Yeah.
The 2 that were born in Israel? Okay.
Yeah.
So you, so did it bother you that here you had this Hebrew or Jewish background, and then you're working at St. Anne's Institute? Well,
you know, interestingly, I also, when I was in graduate school, I was a recipient of the National Jewish Welfare Board and the Federation scholarships to go into Jewish communal service. And I thought all along in my life, I was really influenced by the Yom Kippur War. that I would.
You were
and-
there in Israel?
No,
then?
no, but I was here. I was only 16 at the time, but it changed my whole trajectory, even though I grew up in a Jewish home. But, you know, I realized that you know, Jewish communal service it owns your whole life. And I just decided that I needed to expand my horizons, and I actually gave the scholarships back while I was still in graduate school. Went to live in Israel. That was seminal for me, because what I realized there is that, you know, I was treating people who, for instance, had sex offenses in their background, and I realized there that we're all human beings first, and we all have the same human vulnerabilities and frailties, desires and hopes and aspirations, and that really helped me overcome some blind spots that I had about being Jewish that made me, as I grew up, inadvertently think that Jews are immune to certain things. They're not. And it allowed me to become a better clinical therapist, and ultimately I love what I do, and I love, actually, I love that I'm a member of the Jewish community doing Tikkun Olam in the you know, the outside community.
And what about the name Trinity Alliance or Trinity Institution? How did they develop the word Trinity? And is it based on the Christian religion, or is it based on something else and just bringing maybe three parties together?
Yeah, it started with the Episcopal. It was started by Reverend Creighton Story, an Episcopalian reverend. But it's long since become a nonprofit lay board, and you know, its Christian roots are only in, you know, what the Christian ethic, I guess, of helping and being, you know, sensitive to the plight of others.
A professor in Hartford is Trinity College, and he says he's always trying to get Jewish kids to go there, and they're always like, "Well, Trinity, I'm not going to go to a," you know, they think a Catholic or, you know, sectarian, and it's non-sectarian, you know, so
Yeah.
it's always
I always tell this joke. When I first got the job, somebody called me and was asking for information and asked me how to spell Trinity. And I said, it's funny, it's a Jewish guy spelling Trinity. But, you know, for me, it's that message of, you know, in our community, are we doing social action? Are we doing social, you know, one-time social projects? Or are we really repairing the world? And for me, my whole life has been, adult life has been devoted to one thing, and that is to make the world a better place.
And certainly...
And it comes from my Judaism.
And your reputation in the Capital District is second to none. I mean, I have never heard anyone say anything but positive things about you. So yeah, I think you are doing that. And in this small area of the world, you know, you are...
Well, it is a very Jewish thing, like you're saying. I know my wife's enrolled in an MSW program, and one part of her internship is to be in a, really it is actually Christian. It's not, like you're saying, non-sectarian. And she asked her head rabbi, you know, a big rabbi, can I do it? You know, here she's an Orthodox Rebbitzin, and she's working in this faith. And he says, listen, you know, you just help people, and there's nothing, surely not nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing anti-Orthodox Judaism and just about helping people. So, you know, you're right. I mean, Judaism isn't just very narrow-minded. It's really, everybody needs to get help. There's enough help to, there's enough people who need help. That I know also, even in the, like you say, in the Jewish community. It's one of my bugaboos also, where a lot of times, you know, because people come to us in Chabad, we're so open, and there are alcoholics, and that's why I say the drug abuses. And like you say, when I was a kid, Jews, they aren't they alcoholics? And you know, oh, wait a minute, they're poor. That's what I was saying. A Jewish person's poor, that they need to have a kosher kitchen, kosher pantry. And you know, my eyes also opened up and saying, hey, there's Jews who need just food on the table.
And guess what? You, according to your website, have a pantry, a food pantry.
Yes, two.
Two of them?
Yes.
And where are those located?
Arbor Hill at 47 North Lark and at 15 Trinity Place.
Oh,
And-
at your headquarters?
Yep, and they're open 5 days a week.
And where do you get food from?
We're funded through the New York State Department of Health Hunger Prevention Nutrition Assistance Program. It's a whole network that's been there for 30 years. They thought that they were going to abolish hunger, and in fact, food insecurity has only grown. You know, we have gardens all over the city, and we raise fresh vegetables. You know, so.
That's
But
great.
even these
Little
big
garden.
corporations, they throw out so much. That's what, because my son is involved with the kosher pantry.
Shalom Food Pantry, let's give it a
Yeah.
shameless plug.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that, you know, and they're very nice about it, all these big stores where they're, hey, you know, we have extra, or it's getting out of date, and they know they, you know, they have to get rid of it fast, so
Yeah.
might as well give it to people who need it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to that point that you made, and this is for me. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I do believe that the Jewish community, it would be helpful to look at it. I think my inadvertent message, takeaway from all my schooling, was that Jews are immune to this. And I think that that is, and I think that, you know, you sort of grow up that people of the book are above it all. And when you really come down to it, you know, Abraham, Isaac, they all had their challenges that are human challenges. I think you know, one of the messages that I try to spread whenever I get before a Jewish audience is, you know, we are not different. We, you know, what makes us different is our, you know, our Tanakh. And, you know, utilizing that and understanding it and always striving for better, but never to separate ourselves. Because by separating ourselves, I think we dehumanize others and ourselves. And the human frailty is human frailty.
So what was the most, and you've been doing this for quite a number of years now, I mean, as with Trinity. I mean, how,
This is my 13th year.
the bar mitzvah year.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. You gotta have a celebration for this. Kiddush.
Right.
So, what, you know, you've been through what, 3 mayoral administrations?
Two.
Two.
Just Mayor Jennings and,
Okay.
Mayor Sheehan.
And,
Actually, no, it's 20 years. I don't know.
yeah, that's right, Jennings is 20. So, but, and he mentioned Whalen, so that's why I was just making sure. Okay, so what was your take on the 2 different administrations? I mean, do you have to deal with government at some level?
Yeah,
You know.
I mean, to some extent, but, you know, I mean, I think, you know, they have their own, you know, bigger issues to solve, and it's a
Okay.
big challenge, but
All right.
they've been very supportive.
So the question is, do you have to deal with government on an everyday basis, or?
Mostly on a contract management basis. So we are, you know, dispensing with funds, of funds that are provided by the state.
Okay.
And as such, we have certain responsibilities and obligations based in a contract. And so each one of those has a contract manager to whom we relate.
And you have a $4 million budget?
Correct.
Now, just so you know that you post your 990 forms, which is for nonprofit organizations, on your website, but you haven't posted 2010, 2014, or 2015. So,
we will get on that.
okay,
Good point.
I'm here to tell you.
He's the big reporter, Mark.
Okay.
over
I
here.
wanted to find out what was happening most recently, and
We
But
had,
most of your funding is government, it's not private?
well,
really?
it's changing. So we've done a lot more private fundraising. We've been blessed that way. But we have had 2 very good years. 2014 and 15 were very good.
oh, well, you should
financially.
have your 990
So
form.
it'll go on there. Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. You know, it's overwhelming what we all wear 15
Right.
hats in a nonprofit.
Right. Oh, I see that. And your board, I mean, you do have wonderful, I mean, quite a diverse board.
Mhm.
And I know one of the board members, Selig Corman, who also is a TI member,
Yes.
former pharmacist or current pharmacist, whatever, but, you know, great guy.
Yes,
And, you know,
absolutely.
But, you know, you don't stick to one branch or one focus. I mean, your board is from all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Which is great.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
How does someone get on your board?
You know, usually there's an introduction, or you know, I'll meet people, or
Do you
a
have to have
member
a
of.
certain skill set?
You know, I mean, we look for diversity that way. I think Trinity's board is made up with, first and foremost, people with heart, who care about the community and who want to serve. And I think that's you know, if I had to say one thing that distinguishes as a trait, it would be that.
Well, I know Ben Overing, and you're vice president of the board, and
Okay.
he's terrific.
He
He's
really
still
is.
with Key Bank, yeah?
He was with
Was.
Key, he's now with SEFCU.
SEFCU,
Yeah,
okay. Well,
yeah.
he's terrific, so
Yeah, yeah,
I'm glad
agree.
that you got
He's
him.
our treasurer.
And when you talk, well, here it says vice president, but it says Charles Pinckney is the treasurer.
Okay, you're right. You're right. I stand
Okay.
corrected.
He's
oh my
the
goodness.
reporter over here.
Vice President. You're absolutely correct. I'm gonna get admonished on that one.
No, it's at the end.
Mark
No one-
corrected it.
Okay, so thank
Listen,
you.
the bottom line is that you're doing great work.
Thank
We're
you.
out of time, it went too fast, and we'll have to get the next year's report next year from you, but, you know, it's like they say, the Jewish view, the Jewish people not only help themselves, of course, they're very kind and charitable, but on the other hand, you have to think about everybody, and that's what you're doing there, and continue with your good success
Thank you.
and in good health.
I'm
Thank
very
you so
proud
much,
you made it.
Elizabeth.
You were on the show.
Oh,
here.
thank you
It's
for
very nice
having
to
me. I really enjoyed it.